we started allowing people to opt out of sensitive occasions. Mother's Day is the biggest moment of our year. We send a lot of marketing about it. We heard from customers that some people just really didn't want to be exposed to it. We didn't hear it from like thousands of people, but we heard it from enough people to be like, there's probably something bigger going on here. And then when we acted on it, we found that to be true, and the response was enormous when we said to people, okay, we're going to let you opt out.
Welcome back to another episode of the Brilliant Commerce Podcast, where I get a chance to sit down with some of the brightest minds behind iconic, or as I like to say, next to be iconic brands. Today's guest will be no exception to that rule. Joining me today is Charlotte Langley, CMO at Bloom & Wild. Charlotte leads brand and performance and insight and product and so much more. That's one of the many reasons I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So Charlotte, welcome to the pod.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I already gave away the fact that I'm in Montreal today, actually recording this from the house I grew up in. So I'm feeling all kinds of nostalgia. Where am I finding you today?
You're finding me in London at home, hiding from the tube strikes. So I'm hoping that we'll have a nice zen time and I won't be interrupted by too many people knocking on the door.
Same. So I'll keep my fingers crossed for you. You do the same for me. So tube strike. My next question would be, how's your week going so far? So outside of maybe sort of difficult to move around London, how is your week going?
Yeah, it's going well. I was reflecting on all the different things that happen in a week. Yesterday we were talking about Christmas range confirmations and volumes. Today I've been talking with my leadership team about a whole process evolution for how we kind of run the work in the team. Tomorrow I'll be prepping strategy share slides for the whole business. So it's very varied, but that's how I like it.
Yes. So you're keeping busy is another way of saying that. I found your background in the sort of the research I did leading up to this really fascinating. So before we get into Bloom & Wild, maybe take a minute or two and let's tell the audience like how your background, your story, and what brought you to Bloom & Wild.
Yeah, so I've been at Bloom & Wild now for about 6 years, but before I got here, I kind of grew up, I always say, at L'Oreal. I joined their graduate training program in the UK, and I was there for almost 7 years. And I worked across sales and marketing, actually. So I actually started in sales working with big retailers like Superdrug, Tesco, Sainsbury's, and that was a super good grounding in uh, really what marketing is for, which is, of course, to build brands and products that people want, but it is ultimately to sell stuff. I
Yes.
think we can sometimes be a little bit precious about that. So I think starting with that sales training was really helpful. I moved across into marketing. I worked mainly on Maybelline, in fact. So I still have a little soft spot for Maybelline. I still use their mascara and concealer to this day. And it was a really, really great training ground. I learned a lot. They give you a lot of responsibility very early in your career, which is brilliant. But I just got to a stage where I thought, actually, do I want my boss's job? And the truthful answer was no. And I felt like, it's such a big machine, which makes it an awesome place to learn. But equally, you kind of get to a point where you think, am I personally making a really big difference, or could they just ship somebody else into my role and it would be fine? So I decided to make the leap to go somewhere smaller. I stayed in beauty initially, and I went to a kind of Aussie, more startup makeup brand, and was leading their marketing in Europe. And then Aaron, my now boss, dropped me a message on LinkedIn and said, "I'm looking for somebody. Are you looking?" And it was just really good timing.
No,
And
but yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
never looked
Yeah.
back. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that those are the best ways of finding those opportunities. Like sometimes they find you. It's just being
Yeah.
open to it and sort of being ready. And I like the intention behind the decision to go somewhere that's a little bit earlier, somewhere that's smaller, where, I mean, as you just described your week, it's less of a machine and it's more of like, actually, we're building a company and we're building
Yeah.
this something that is durable. And we talked about durability during our sort of a warm-up call. And, when I remark on the amount of time that you have spent in some of those roles, I think there's not just about the durability in brand, but durability in career. I mean, I think it is
Yeah.
difficult to extract those learnings from some of these fantastic brands and companies if you're only there for 6 months or you're there for a year. It's
Yeah.
like, how do you be there for a while to have a meaningful impression, but have a meaningful impression sort of made on you? And
Yeah.
so that was just one of the things that stuck out at me that I thought was really interesting. And like you, I tend to stay at places for a while and really sink my teeth in and sort of learn as much as I can and create as much impact as possible.
Yeah, and you learn so much building something, and you go through. Well, I think we'll talk about this later, but you go through different phases of a company and growth, and I think that's really valuable to be able to know how to respond to different kinds of situations. And then the other thing is that there's sort of a narrative that you need to jump around and get loads of experience, but like. I've had loads of different experiences in this one role. Like my job has changed every 6 to 12 months based on responsibilities that I had, what's going on. So, I think you can, if you are in a high-paced learning environment, then embrace it.
Yes, that's wonderful advice. That there's a lot of things that are written that sometimes we believe to be true. Like, oh, it's been 3 or 4 years. I need to switch. Well, actually, you just need to keep learning. And sometimes you can
Yeah.
stay within a certain organization and be curious and be learning and create additional impact. It doesn't mean there isn't a playbook to follow. I guess is the advice that I like to give. And it sounds like sort of you're a living example of that. Um, Okay, so the beauty background, I think is really interesting, and then the opportunity at Bloom and Wild. So what was it about Bloom and Wild? What is Bloom and Wild? Let's start there.
Yeah, not everybody will necessarily know the brand. So, Bloom and Wild, we are Europe's leading D2C flower and gifting company. We actually have a family of three brands. So we have Bloom and Wild, we have Bloom On, and we have Bergamot, in different countries across Europe. I'll probably talk mainly today about Bloom and Wild because it's kind of the English-speaking brand and the one that's largest in our portfolio. But yeah, we have expanded. And I say flower and gifting, very much heritage is in flowers, but we'll talk about this. We're expanding into other gifting, and that's kind of the future of the company. So that's a big part of the journey that I'm now navigating with my team.
That's amazing. And again, I sort of have done some amount of research on the brand and on the product. And going back through my notes, you mentioned something in our prep call that I wrote down right away that a lot of business is built on the obsession with customer and feedback. And I think like going back to your days as a marketer and the feedback that you got by understanding sales, um, as we think about putting that into operating practice in both the physical and the digital product, like what does that look like today for you at Bloom and Wild?
Yeah, it's super important, and I'm always saying to the team, like, do we have any insight on this and what's that based on? So I think on physical product side of things, we have some really good feedback loops through our customer delight team. So if there are problems, they come into customer delight, we use kind of tech AI machine learning to categorize those so that we get really actionable outputs. So that's coming into our customer delight team. We also have obviously our NPS surveys, and we have sender NPS, we have recipient NPS. Obviously, that gives us very different data. When you're in a gifting business, you kind of got two sides of that transaction, which are equally important. Um, and all of that can help us then really pinpoint areas of our product range specifically that we need to change. So it might be that there's like, for example, we've just done our Mother's Day NPD for next year, right? So, and there's a particular rose type that caused a whole bunch of problems this Mother's Day. So we tried to design much less of that into the range. And but if we didn't have the data, we wouldn't be able to do that. And it's customers are telling us this is the problem. We then have to make it into a sort of readable format that we can really then action. So that's the physical side of things. And then on digital product, I think um the best example here, and forgive me if people have heard me talk before because they'll probably know this example, but we started allowing people to opt out of sensitive occasions. So we're a gifting
Hmm.
business, we're at flowers, Mother's Day is the biggest moment of our year. We send a lot of marketing about it. we heard from customers, again, this came in through our customer delight function, that some people just really didn't want to be exposed to it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think what's interesting about this example is this is actually taking something that didn't impact very many people. So we didn't hear it from like thousands of people, but we heard it from enough people to be like, it's probably
Yeah.
there's probably something bigger going on here. And then when we acted on it, we found that to be true, and the response was enormous when we said to people, "Okay, we're going to let you opt out, and we're going to build different flows for you." So I think there's a common thread here, which is like
Hmm.
really trying to aggregate lots of individual customers' experience into something bigger that we can then action.
Yeah, I really like that. I think sometimes too about this notion of the difference between being data driven and being data informed. And so like that story that you tell, if you were just entirely data driven and your hands were off the keyboard, maybe there wouldn't have been enough signal to allow people to opt out there because we just got to wait for the data to tell us. But being
Yeah.
data informed and still trusting your gut and being connected to the customer, there was something that felt off about that. And it sounds like the team dug a little bit further. Then there was this impact. It seemed like there was a really big impact for people that you listen to, you make that adjustment. And I think that's where you sort of get customers for life. That's what it means to be building a brand.
Yeah, and it's so important in what we do specifically. You've hit the nail on the head, because I often say to people, actually, the beauty of Bloom Wild is we have this like data side, but we also have this huge amount of empathy for our
Yeah.
customers and what we're doing for them, and it's the combination of those things which is powerful, because we get that we're not just delivering you like a new kitchen utensil, which if it doesn't arrive is a bit annoying, but like, uh, we'll replace it, whatever. This is, we're delivering something which is standing in for you with somebody who you care about.
Yeah. It's like
And
a
so
proxy
therefore,
for you and your feelings about the person
yeah.
receiving it.
So we
Yeah.
have to think differently. We have to act on small things. We have to treat people as the individuals that they are and respond to their specific circumstances. Because if we
Hmm.
don't do that, we're not providing the service that we promise.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that service for a sec because, like um, a lot of brands get started where there's a founder who can't find a product that specifically meets their needs, which is sort of a fancy way of saying innovation. And Bloom and Wild really started with a very real innovation. In the UK, Letterbox flowers solved the delivery problem. And another thing that you said that stuck out to me in the prep call, and I have it here in my notes, is that you can't replicate that first innovation forever. And so we've already started to unpack how you you use data, how you're close to your customer. But as you're sort of talking to your team, how do you think about continuing to expand categories? Your customers have given you permission to market to them on several occasions. They're looking to you for these moments, but you can't replicate that first innovation forever. So how do you think about that in terms of future roadmap?
Mm. Yeah, I think, let me situate this in some examples. So, what I mentioned at the start, we're on this journey to expanding into broader gifting, and as we were thinking about how we do that, we had to really go back and understand, beyond just the flowers, what is it that people really value about our service and our product, and
Yeah.
then you get to some much more like um replicable elements. So actually, yes, it's how easy it is to order. Yes, it's that we have great customer service, that our delivery is pretty reliable. But actually, you get things like, oh, it's the fact that the unboxing experience is really great for the recipient and it actually feels like a gift. So
Yeah.
that then becomes really, really key, because it drives two things for me and my team, is like, one, what we're solving for here is we shouldn't distract ourselves with people who are like, I don't know, ordering a book from Amazon and then wrapping it up and taking it to their granny. Like, that's not what we're trying to replace.
Yep.
We're doing that stand-in job. So we call it care from afar.
Oh, I
So
like that.
we are helping people show up when they can't be there in person, so we can very clearly focus on that mission and not distract ourselves with anything else. And then because we're focused on that, then you see, okay, this thing has to really show up as a gift. And actually, when you look in the market, it's quite hard to find people who really do that well. So you start to understand, okay, this is where we can really, um, this is what we can really build on, is building that experience that feels like everything in that box is intentional, has a place. It's a great experience for the person to unwrap it, take things out, experience it. So I think once you try and break down what people value into like smaller parts, you then start to see the things that you can draw on for future innovation and future growth.
I love that. You mentioned some things too, like it's easy to assume that there's many aspects of the purchase journey, the gifting journey, the unboxing journey that should be table stakes. And I think those are largely on the ordering side of things. It should be easy to find a product. It should be easy enough to add it to your cart and to move through checkout. But the act of giving a gift and having that gift be received where care from afar, I think is a really great lens to look through, isn't necessarily table stakes. So it sounds like that's something that the Bloom and Wild team sort of really takes to heart and a part of the sort of like the brand values that you've created. Um, is it fair to say, as we think about the the durability that you've been able to create, the shift from product innovation to really being a brand, more than just letterbox flowers, but some like a company and a platform that stands for delivering care from afar. um, I think that's the part that I'm the most interested in as I go back to that sort of our first call is how do you shift your customer's perception from we just send flowers to we help people show care in a meaningful and reliable way from what could be hundreds or thousands of miles away.
That's the big question, right? So, look, we're, we are very early in that shift, but I think if we go back to, um, I think it's go back to the idea of permission. Like,
Yeah.
actually, I think we were almost too humble as a
Hmm.
brand around what we thought customers would give us permission to do. And as soon as we've started doing other things, yeah, the NPS on our broader gifting range is actually even stronger than flowers. Like, people are really happy with what we're offering, and we get great feedback. The thing that we are very early in the journey about is re-educating people that we don't just do flowers. And I'll be honest, like, we're not very far in that journey, and that's like a big job that me and my team have to do over the next few years, and we're starting to do that. We can talk later about how you invest responsibly and think about unit economics and all of those like good things that are super important but maybe not the sexiest. So there's a journey to that, but I think you have to have the baseline trust from your customer
Yeah.
that the first thing that you said you were going to deliver on, you deliver on that before you can expand into other things. But I also think we have worked hard on the brand, as you mentioned, and we created back in 2020 the Care Wildly brand platform for Bloom
Hmm.
and Wild, and that is really expandable and also to all kinds of different product types. But also, I think people really understand what it means. So yeah, Mother's Day, for example, we've just done some out of home advertising on the tube, and like, my friends keep saying to me, "Oh, you've gone viral on LinkedIn because we've shared this long form ad copy that just speaks to what it's like to go home to your mum and, like, the joy and the comfort of that and all the annoying stuff that comes with it, like fixing her phone and, like, her having moved your stuff out of your room that you thought was still yours.
Yes.
I'm saying this to someone who's in their childhood room. So I think you also then through all of that kind of brand behavior and your comms, you build this sense of this is a brand who gets it. And
Yeah.
therefore I am more likely to trust them to do other new things for me that I hadn't considered before.
Yeah, this is a brand that gets me and gets it. And that's an incredibly difficult thing to measure, I would assume. It sort of like comes back to this idea of being data informed and not entirely data driven. And you said unit economics aren't sexy. I think unit economics are sexy. And I think that this is all sort of like commingled in this notion of trust. So as your customers trust you and give you permission to expand into additional categories, you move beyond that initial product innovation, if you're introducing a product whose unit economics aren't strong and you need to then very quickly remove that product from market, you're going to erode that customer trust. So to me, it is really this formula that goes back to being a really smart operator, marketer, um, like seller, of course. Like you
Yeah.
ultimately want to put product out into the world that customers love to buy and love to gift and love to share. And the way that those products can be evergreen is you need to have strong unit economics. So
Yeah.
to
And
me,
I
it's
think, you know,
really
you
about being a
can have a
smart,
path
responsible
to that.
operator. Yeah,
Yeah, you can have a path to the strong unit economics. You know, nobody's expecting day one something to function, in the way that it will in 3 years' time, but you do need to know how you think you're gonna get there,
yeah,
because otherwise, you're right, you sell a kind of a promise of a product or a service that it actually isn't viable.
right. Yeah. So and you've done some testing into different categories, and we talked about this too. Maybe you like talk to me about a category that surprised you the most, like maybe where you thought
Yeah.
initially customers wouldn't give you permission to go, and they were like, "Come on in, this is great."
Yeah, so I'll be honest, I was wrong about this. When we were first expanding, I thought, okay, flowers, you put them in your home, they're fragrant, clearly like candles, home fragrance, this is going to be what people want from us. And we do sell candles and people like them, especially as like actually things to add on to their flowers, but standalone less so. We're doing better now when we put them in gift sets which have a really considered kind of ritual around them. But actually, the thing that is biggest for us is food and drink. So fresh baked things like letterbox brownies or hampers. Um, and I think on reflection, the reason for that is probably that flowers are actually consumable. They're fresh, they're consumable. They don't hang around in people's homes, but they have this powerful kind of "I was thinking of you"
Yeah,
impact. And so actually people transferred that to, "Oh, okay, yeah, I don't necessarily wanna send flowers for this thing, but equally I don't wanna necessarily send them a thing that sits in their home. I want to send them something to mark the occasion, and then it's gone."
Hmm.
So I was definitely surprised by that. I thought that people would find the leap from flowers to food bigger than they have done, whereas actually I think in a customer mind, it's like, "Oh, no, it's a fresh consumable gift that
Yeah.
marks an occasion well."
Yeah. I'm sending care from afar. Like now when you
Yeah,
say it, it feels obvious that they would look to you for that. But yeah, like you, I think, maybe initially instinctively I would say, well, that's not the normal place for us to expand into,
yeah.
which is interesting. So you have this feedback mechanism. The other thing that I learned about you and the team that I thought was interesting is that you do have a small research team, and it
Oh,
seems like you use that research team as part of like a decision engine. The instinct to build a research team, did that come from your time at L'Oreal? Was that just something that, you sort of, when you got there, you knew you needed that?
yeah.
If we're going to do this product innovation, like we need people who are doing this type of research and bringing us the ideas that we can ultimately execute on.
Yeah. I think, and look, initially research didn't sit in my remit. It's one of the kind of many things I picked up along the way. Partly because it didn't really exist as a function. So we had a single UX researcher who you might,
Yep.
imagine in a ecom, tech heavy company. The product team, the digital product team is where the research was sitting. And the rest of us were kind of funding for ourselves. And so
Hmm.
we did really need to professionalize that and bring in somebody who could sort of really create a function and provide some structure. And so our director of customer insights been with us for a few years now and's been doing a great job, but it's definitely been a journey for him. Like he's had to work hard to educate the rest of the business. Obviously, product way ahead. They know how to use research, but only a certain type of research actually, really. Whereas
Yeah.
he's had to kind of come in and say, "Hey, look, here's all the things that we could do. What's on your mind? Tell me how you're thinking we might be able to help," but also really help them understand, okay, is insights what you need here? Do you need a survey?
Yeah.
Do you just need to speak to customers? Can we actually answer this question? What are you gonna do with this insight? So is it actually worth doing or no? Or are you just looking for validation? In which case, like, this isn't the place to come. So it's been a real journey over the past few years of getting more and more departments comfortable with what to use research for, how to brief them, how to think about actioning insights. But now it's in just such a different place, and it's really transformative because it means that we can really back up our decisions. And it's not just, good practice to be able to say to the board, like, we're
Yeah.
doing this because this, but also you have much higher confidence in what
Yes.
you're doing and that you're not wasting people's time and resources. So yeah, it's a small but mighty team. There's only three of them. And we're making heavy use of AI there to help them do more, extract more insight from different types of research and data that we have existing in the business. So
Yeah, I love that. I mean, the first part about that is that I love is the just the discipline. Like just so because you have insights, a team that is doing research and producing insights doesn't mean that every single initiative needs research or can produce insights. So just being intellectually honest enough to have the conversation. I think actually this one, like we're not going to be able to help. Whereas a lot of times, like you have the department's just there to work, and they're like, give me the
yeah.
mandate, then I'm ultimately going to do it. So I think that's really helpful framing or just like a lesson for
Yeah.
folks to hear. um, and then I am curious about the use of AI because one of the things that I have seen is that as a thought partner, as a research partner, it can be really powerful if you have really um, attention to detail oriented humans processing that research that is being done to make sure that we are actually getting like really meaningful insights out of it. So, yeah, is there any insights that has come out of the team's adoption of AI that you might be able to share? Maybe something that has worked well or perhaps has worked less well for them to continue to be small and even mightier than before.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I've been talking about with our insights director for a while is like, how do we connect data and insight? Like, we have a lot of data in the business that is kind of, I suppose, maybe under potentialized because it's difficult to access, difficult to read.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we've been working on is how can we use AI agents to like scrape vast quantities of data. So I mentioned before our recipient NPS data, for example, and we were already using an like AI-enabled program to theme that feedback, but now that we can do it ourselves and like push it to look for hidden themes, it's great because you get things similar to what I was talking about before. You get insights which are maybe not like thousands of people, but tens to hundreds of people saying things. So like this is very small, but a good example over Mother's Day, like actually at high volume times, always things operationally, break down or go wrong. But one of the things was like the hydration gel bags around people's flowers that were bursting or were not there. Now, we might not have picked up on that being a specific operational problem that we needed to fix with our our warehouses, um, but because it's not, a human would just never have been able to comb through that data.
Yeah. Too much.
Whereas this way we can pick up on all of those smaller things that in aggregate have a really big impact. We've also been able to see, for example, that um that delivery being a day late is one of the biggest drivers of dissatisfaction over like any other quality problem. So that's an interesting one for us to think about. Okay, well, how do we message that better at checkout?
Yeah.
What should we invest in delivery carriers, etc. So you start to get a different lens on things.
Yeah, I think the ability to sort of find those nuances in larger data sets like that, that is sort of you're being able to give this smaller team a superpower, whereas maybe they would have been able to only operate at like a higher surface level before, but now they can sort of get in there a little bit deeper.
Yeah,
Cool.
exactly.
I mean, I still hear that like kind of wrangling all of that data into one place is still a challenge. Like we have so much data, but is it, can we connect it? Can we get the right signal from it? Is even with AI or machine learning or natural language processing, I think they're all sort of close cousins. It's still difficult. We still need to have the data somewhere that's accessible.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think, traditionally you just get bottlenecks, right? Because you have experts who know how to like interact with the data. And I think what we're working through as a company now is, yeah, okay, we need data integrity. So we do need our
Right.
experts working on that.
Yeah.
So that not everyone has 10 different interpretations of the same data set. But there's a real democratization like opportunity here because if we can make those data sets more kind of interactable with, if that makes
Yeah.
sense,
It is.
then you can really unlock a lot. So that's what we're trying to
Mm.
do at the moment is think about, okay, how does the data need to be, um, kind of surfaced so that the team can access this in the right way, don't make conclusions that, actually don't stand up,
Yeah.
with a bit of scrutiny, but equally that we can remove those bottlenecks, which just limit the amount of progress you can make.
This is literally the thing that keeps me up at night, and I haven't figured out the right way to tell the story, but I love the word integrity. Um, getting our data to a place where we have this high degree of integrity. We've just my head of product has recently coined the term ARR, which we sell a platform, and when I talk to the board, the thing that they want to hear the most about is like, where's our ARR? But we're thinking about AR differently, not in the form of revenue. When we think about the data platform that we have, we are using ARR to describe accuracy, reliability, and relevancy. And that if we're able to deliver that as a platform, that is maybe one way of delivering data integrity. Now, if you ask agents, you deploy agents on top of something that has that integrity, I think you can start to imagine a place where I would feel safe democratizing access to that data and to those agents because I would believe that the output is going to be reliable. And the other side
Exactly.
of the equation too is when we think about agents or we think about these large frontier models, it is their job to give you like some sort of answer and an opinion. And if the data isn't of high integrity, like they're still going to summarize it for you. And
Yeah.
then then the danger is you're going to parrot that summary to the organization. It looks defensible, um, but it might not be accurate, and that can have real ramifications. And so I still feel like we're in the very early innings. These tools feel so magic. You ask for something, you get an answer in a time horizon that was previously unimaginable. But I think
Yeah.
remembering that let's slow down a sec. Let's make sure that we have high integrity, that the answers we're getting are the right answers, is sort of a reflex that requires some amount of like maturity and experience. There's no way around
Yeah,
it.
and trial and error, like, we rolled out something that was helping us with our trading meetings, deep diving into, like, cohort models and stuff, and then we uncovered that actually, like, it wasn't quite working properly, but I think the important thing is
Hmm.
that you don't then go, "Oh, okay, well, we can't use AI for this." You go, "Okay, well, what did we do that meant that it came to the wrong conclusions? How can we tighten that up?" And also just
That's
things are
such a good
moving
framing.
so fast, these models are
Yes.
moving so fast that stuff that was, as you say, unimaginable like even 3 months ago is now possible. So, I think that you've gotta keep testing, keep iterating, and it's kind of a bit of an exhausting time because it's so fast and, you gotta evolve really fast. But, I firmly believe that, we will get to a point where we trust the output, and it's just about working out what we as humans need to put in place as the parameters.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that we can get to this place that is the holy grail where we can legitimately democratize access to data to the entire organization. Wouldn't you love to have people be able to have a hypothesis, have an idea, have a question, and get a really good answer? Because then that starts the whole like sort of idea flywheel within the organization. But when there are those bottlenecks, and it's historically, I have found that that's just a difficult thing. Like, years ago it was like, well, if we invest in business intelligence, then anyone can go and self-serve. But that really hasn't played out. I do think that we're on the cusp of AI being able to deliver on that promise. I don't think we're going to get there as fast as most people feel. Like there's still an awful lot of hard work to be done to get to this place where we can trust, and that there is that integrity. But it would seem to me that you have a sort of a leg up in the fact that you have had research and insights as being part of the sort of the foundation of what the team does. And this idea of like just sort of like, okay, let's test and learn, let's be really curious, but let's be really thoughtful and careful because going back to where we started, your customers have given you permission to be able to test along with them, to bring them along in the journey.
Yeah, exactly that, and we keep going back to them as we go.
Yeah. Well, so let's use that as a segue to talk about retention. I think, I'll say something that is like super obvious. Like chasing demand is really expensive. And so how do we sort of, instead of chasing that demand, how do we think about sort of creating demand? And I think creating demand with customers that we already have a relationship with is a really wonderful place to start. Um, I'd be really curious if you wouldn't mind maybe unpacking the retention engine at Bloom and Wild. I think product quality is a part of it, the quality of the relationship you have with your customers. But yeah, like, what are some of the things that make the engine go?
Yeah. And look, it really there are so many parts to it, and I think, sometimes people think, "Oh, retention engine, CRM," and that, like, is a big part of it, and, like, don't get me wrong, email is a big channel for us, but, um, there are so many other things to it. So we have to deliver a great experience in the first place. So there's that our digital experience we've talked about, the physical product. And I think, what we are very acutely aware of is what people say about the physical product we delivered is
Hmm.
really key to the retention because there's a feedback loop between the gifter and the recipient of the gift. So, if you send me flowers, I'm going to send you a WhatsApp and say, "Hey, Brian, thanks so much for the flowers. They're beautiful." Or maybe I'll send you if it doesn't go well, I'll say, "Oh, thank you so much, like, but, you should know that actually they didn't arrive well, so you should get them to
Yeah,
give
they
you a
got here 2 days
refund."
late, or yes, or they were
Yeah, or,
damaged.
they
Yeah,
were
something.
yeah. So, actually, for us, that, like, there's another feedback loop in all of these feedback loops I've been talking about between the recipient and the gifter. So that's really, really important in terms of like what's memorable for people. And one of the things that we find, this is kind of anecdotal, but also comes out in the data. Whenever I talk to people about Bloom and Wild, oh, I love Bloom and Wild. The flowers last for ages is one of the things that they say. So that's like a memorable, sticky thing about our physical product that is
Hmm.
different from another brand that they could get it from. And that is because of the way we set up our supply chain and et cetera, which I won't bore you with. But I think really having never forget in marketing that you're selling people something, a product or a service, and that thing has to be good in order to drive retention. Like, that sounds so basic that I almost hesitate to say it, but I think sometimes as marketers we get obsessed with like segmentation and personalization of marketing messages. It's like, yeah, but if the thing that you're selling them isn't good, then no amount of that is going to get them to come back. So
Yeah.
that's the first thing I would say. Is the proposition right? Is the product, the service right? Part of that is for us is our customer delight team, generosity. So one of the things that drives retention for us is if things go wrong, we fix it really well. And we do things like I'll go back to Mother's Day because it's just fresh in my mind. But if we track deliveries through our careers, and if we can see that something's going to be late, we just proactively resend it. Nobody's asked us to do it, but we just know it's important and we're like, "This needs to arrive, so we're gonna just send another one because that delivery looks like it's stuck." That's you might think, "Oh, that's crazy from a, economics point of view," but actually we can see that then that translates through to repeat rates because people are so impressed with how we've dealt with a problem. So that's like a really important part of the flywheel. And we've talked about brand as well, tone of voice, feeling like a brand that gets them, that drives retention because people feel like they're
Yeah.
part of something, that they're contributing to a business that they share some values with. And then I think you get to all of the more functional stuff, like your triggers, your nudges, your promos. We have occasion reminder functionality. People can say, we encourage people to save occasions. We remind them that so and so's birthday is coming up, give them an offer. We have our app, which makes it really easy to repeat, saves your addresses, all of those things. We now have a rewards program as well, which is proving to be really, really meaningful in terms of driving repeat revenue. So those are kind of all the, like, I suppose, marketing mechanics, but I mentioned a ton of stuff up front, which I think sometimes gets forgotten.
Yeah, it gets forgotten because that's the hard part. I don't think it gets forgotten. I think that's the it's easy to start with the pieces that feel like it's a little bit of blocking and tackling. And I do think that, we're as an industry sometimes we're like, well, AI is going to go and it's going to solve all of these things for us, like the nudges and the reminders, and I can reinvent my CRM. But no matter how many of these conversations I have, when we look at what it means to be a great and durable brand, it comes back to, is the product fantastic? Do you obsess over making your customers love you? Those are the really hard things that what have loved so far about this conversation is that you've given us real good insight into how you're using technology, even how you're leaning into AI to be able to make some of those blocking and tackling functions a little bit easier and more effective. But if at the end of the day, if the product isn't great and if the experience that your customers have with you as a brand isn't fantastic, it's not going to matter. Like, no amount of AI and or technology is going to help us out there. And I want to keep repeating that message because like that's the hard part. But to me, that's like the age old equation for building something that is durable and lasting. And that's exactly the message that you delivered to us today. So maybe that's a good place to sort of wrap up. This has been really fantastic. I really have loved getting to know you and getting to know the brand, and I'll be continuing to watch and to see what additional categories that you all are expanding into. So Charlotte, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, awesome.